Welcome back to the Blue North. Today I'd like to talk a little bit more about Joe Biden and his easy pass that he's getting from the Democrat led left media. It's a very disappointing time. We just we just saw not too long ago that Judge Kavanaugh was dragged through the mud. How his name was, well, they attempted to destroy everything about him, everything he had worked so hard his entire life to build. And we could see how easy the left would throw that all away, how calloused and how really any kind of a lack of real dignity or decency from the left towards anyone on the right. So, what happens when it goes the other way? What happens when an accusation goes towards one of the ones on the left? Well, we have a pattern that we're seeing is happening. See, when Bill Clinton had numerous cases his entire life, he was actually asked to leave a school because of it way back in the day when he was in university, and it's followed him his entire life. He had to pay 6 women to stay quiet. Hillary and him, and Hillary even commented on that you can't really talk about it because it had been actually dealt with in her mind. But just paying people to go away isn't dealing with it, isn't addressing the problem, isn't fixing what is wrong. So Bill Clinton got to have a free pass on many cases where he was inappropriate towards women. The one that really caught him was Monica Lewinsky, which would be the 7th case that is known and is actually agreed with, because 6 of them they paid, and Monica Lewinsky is a 7th one. 7. And just say that those are the only ones. There's more. But just say that those are the only ones. Isn't that ridiculous that there's 7? And he got to be president. And he got to treat an intern the way he treated Monica Lewinsky. And just recently in 2019, he came forward with comments saying that he feels bad for her and he's kept track of her, and he's been saying like things like, "Oh yeah, I really feel bad because I don't think she's really gotten away from it. She hasn't. You destroyed her life, Bill. You have really taken someone that was hoping for a career in politics or to be more involved in politics, and you took it and you twisted it, and you destroyed everything that she was really hoping to do in Washington." So now she's a household name, but not the way she wanted to be. So we're seeing that Biden is his equal in that. We're seeing that many, I think it's 6 now, that have accused Joe Biden of being the same way that Bill Clinton is, for touching and feeling and really putting himself on other women, whether it be just too up close in their personal space. And it's sad. But what's really disturbing is the fact that Joe is like that with little girls, young girls. And he has to play with their hair, and these are very inappropriate things. But when you see that what he's doing with adult women, he's not doing much different with young juvenile women. And that's where it really gets disturbing. So what I don't understand, though, are your Hollywood elite that were so ravenous against Judge Kavanaugh when Kavanaugh was going for office in the Supreme Court, when he was going to be put on the Supreme Court. They were every day, like Alyssa Milano, going out with both guns blazing, trying to get him fired from this nomination, trying to ruin his name, trying to destroy everything that he had built. Now, if you look at Judge Kavanaugh, you look at his life, he was a good student. He was a husband and father, a good husband and father. He had a good track record in the courts. I mean, that's always going to be debatable because of the left and the right and the way they think. But he had a stellar career. What part of that could be used against him? Nothing. They couldn't use that against him. So the difference between the right and the left, the right did not think that there was going to be this kind of an attack coming from the left. Well, they were fooled, because the left, not wanting to have another conservative minded judge on the Supreme Court that would vote against their way of thinking. So, in order to change that, they're willing to go where a conservative is not. The Democrats are willing to go down in the gutter, and they got somebody convinced to do this attack on the character of Judge Kavanaugh. So they made up a fake party, and they made up a fake assault, which they changed drastically from when they first said it was happening to where it ended up. And that had a lot to do with the media as well. So this attack that happened in Blasey Ford's mind was something that happened at this house party in high school, and when they were at this address, this night, and everything else. But not one other person in the whole world can collaborate that with her. So isn't that something that, like, not one other person? She did not go to this party alone. When you're in high school, you don't say, I'm going to go to this party all by myself, and I'm not going to talk to my girlfriends. I'm not going to talk to my boyfriend. I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm just going to simply go. I'm just going to go and see if I know anybody. That's not how it works. I don't think anybody does that. You line up, there's a party, then you start calling all your friends, and then you line up who you're going to go there with. So what happened that night? She went to a party by herself, and now not a single soul in the whole world remembers going to the party. Not a single soul remembers being there. Not a single soul remembers seeing anybody at this party. So if everybody that was involved in the scene at the time, if everybody says, I don't remember that. There was no party at that house. I never went to that party. If nobody went and nobody said there was a party, but the person accusing Judge Kavanaugh, shouldn't that have been a red flag? There was nothing to take to a legal court. And people said that. Legal minds said there was nothing to take to a court. This would never see an actual court hearing because there's no evidence. There's no grounds to bring this to an actual legal fight. So what did they do? Well, the Democrats made a huge deal of it in front of the Senate. They brought it in front of the Senate so they can investigate and question him like it was an actual court. And people in America that aren't paying attention would think that he was on trial. But he wasn't on a fair trial, I'll tell you that much. But here he was, dragged through the mud, having his name and his career and everything about him dragged through the mud and accused of doing these awful things to this woman. And then the Democrats weren't done there. When they knew it wasn't going anywhere, they upped the ante about having what he did to her that evening. It started off with just being a little handsy, and then it ended up being that he was a full-out rapist. Not to mention, someone paid like a ton of people. A lot of women were out in the streets. They were protesting, and they were adamant. They were just filled with hatred and rage towards Kavanaugh. They had professional signs. They were holding up these professional signs, and they could not sleep, and they could not go home, and they could not go to their jobs, and they could not do anything other than stand in that street and protest that Kavanaugh was going to get this position on the Supreme Court. Now, fast forward to 2020, Joe Biden, and this is probably his sixth person that has come forward and said that Joe has been handsy and Joe has touched me inappropriately, and a sexual allegation from the sixth person. And where are the people in the street? They're nowhere. So what's the difference? What's the difference between someone trying to get a position on the Supreme Court and someone trying to be the president of the United States? Well, the people in the streets, they're not out there with their professional signs because nobody paid them to be there, not for Joe Biden. There's nobody protesting anywhere against Joe Biden for this. The the Hollywood elite are not mentioning it at all. And when Alyssa Milano was asked, she said, "No, it's different with Joe. I'm voting for Joe." So she was all about women's rights when it was Kavanaugh being accused, but now that it's one of her own, when it's a Democrat, now all of a sudden it's okay. It's You can look the other way for this because he's running for president and I'm voting for him. Well, it seems a little hypocritical, doesn't it? To the 10th power. It's ridiculous that this is what's going on. And one was contrived and the other one is the sixth time. So I think it holds a little bit more weight. Plus, now that there's more mounting evidence, having Tara Reade's mom call into Larry King on CNN, there's actually a recording. All of a sudden, the recording goes off of Google Play. You can't listen to it anymore. That's a little bit funny too, isn't it? So now we're seeing that Susan Sarandon and Rose McGowan are coming out, and they're saying that Joe Biden should be held accountable. Finally, some people are coming forward. Rose McGowan is probably not going to hold a whole lot of help, but someone like Susan Sarandon, that's at least a good start. But the mainstream media is still doing their absolute best to try and hide this. They're not asking Joe anything about it when they're interviewing him. He's getting a free pass. So why is he getting a free pass from the very media that wouldn't stop talking about Kavanaugh's sexual allegation? It's the same networks, it's the same reporters, and it's very eerie that one person they couldn't stop talking about it, and the other person they won't even start. So Hollywood's pretty silent. You don't see them anywhere. The people that used to be out in the streets with their professional looking signs, nowhere to be found because nobody paid them. But the biggest problem I have is Joe Biden has announced that he wants to have a female running mate. And he wants to put none other than Michelle Obama on the ticket with his name. Why would this woman want to do that? Why would any woman want to do that? Because every step, everywhere they go, they should be asked, especially the woman, if she's running for vice with a president like Joe Biden, right? If Joe wins, you're going to represent a man who treats women this way. In a day and age where the Me Too movement is such an important movement, and when people are trying to look for better character in our leaders, here we are going backwards to an old standard where men are allowed to do and say whatever they want when it comes to the women that work around them. And what woman is going to want to be the vice and have this stigma attached to their name for the rest of their life? Michelle Obama probably won't. And if she does, it must be at some expense, because it's going to be something that should be dogging them at every stop on the campaign trail. But if it doesn't, the mainstream media has all but tried their best so far to ignore it. But it's not going away. It's not going to be just swept under the rug now that there's more evidence out there that the Tara Reade's mom called into CNN to talk to King. So now what? Now they're stuck. They can't go to, do they have to go back to Bernie Sanders? Do they have to try and put Bernie on the ticket and take Biden off? It was the very thing that the Democrats worked against in the first place. They were so behind Biden at the very end because they knew that if it's Biden or the socialist. So now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because sitting currently, when Bernie dropped out of the race for Joe Biden, he had almost 900 delegates. I think you need 1,250 to be the delegate. Nobody else has more than I don't think anybody even has 100. So Bernie would have to be the very next person to step up because he has almost 900. And if they had to go back to having caucuses and having these delegates and getting delegates to vote for them, Bernie stands the best chance of hitting the 1,250 before anybody else. So they worked desperately against Bernie because all of the Democrats felt that this might be something that might be detrimental to the party come the election, because more people are probably not going to want to vote for a socialist. But they can't work against Bernie this many times, can they? They worked against Bernie when it was with Hillary. Now they've worked against him with Biden. And now they have a guy who can't put sentences together and treats women just as badly as what Bill Clinton did. And now, when it's all hitting the fan, now they're trying to get the media to just not talk about it. Maybe it'll go away. So when it was Kavanaugh being accused, the media, the Democrats, the Hollywood elite, the mainstream media, the social media, all working against Kavanaugh on his first accusation, which had no proof, nothing, zero. And it was well documented that there was zero proof. So, and zero evidence. So when that they were working that hard against him just to keep him off of the Supreme Court so that he didn't vote and pass judgment on cases that would go against the Democrats' belief, that's how hard they work to have Kavanaugh destroyed. But when it's Joe, they're working equally as hard to make sure that the media doesn't cover it. So now they just had a few people that were interviewed that could have been potential vice presidents under Joe Biden. Not one mention of the accusation against Joe Biden. Now, one question, would you be able to run with a guy who has an accusation and it's looking more and more like that it's actually something that happened? So why all of a sudden is it silence from everybody? Why is Anderson Cooper not asking Joe Biden about it when he had an interview with him? He got a free pass. Tara Reid came out and said, I'm really ashamed of Anderson Cooper. I'm shocked that he never asked. I'm disappointed. I'm really thoroughly disgusted. Of course she is. She should be. Here he was, calling himself a journalist, interviewing a guy running for president who has a huge accusation attached to his name right now, and not a mention of it, because that would be addressing the issue. And he was told probably not to talk about it, and he didn't. If that was a conservative Republican sitting there would have been no way that they would have talked about anything else. He could have built the best product in the world and give it away for free and brought everybody out of poverty, but had that one accusation, that'd be all they talked about if he was a Republican. But here's Joe sitting there. They're sending in the softest questions possible so that he doesn't flub them too bad, and he never gets asked about a sexual assault allegation that's been leveled against him, and with proof, and the umpteenth many times. So this is what's going on in the presidential race. One of Obama's aides has called now for Biden to step down. Do you think he's going to? Why would he? And really, I can't see Michelle Obama putting her name attached to Joe Biden's right now. I think she's going to run in 4 years at the end of Trump's second term, when he's been in power for 8 years, and they're probably going to want to switch it up, because in history, when you look at all the presidents in the last little while, Reagan had 8 years, and at the end of that, we had Bush Sr. came in with a 4-year. Usually everybody gets a second term, right? For the last little while, with Bush being the exception. Well, he would have been 16 years. If he had a second term, it would have been 16 years of Republican in the White House. So that's something that usually doesn't happen for a Republican to win back to back. And I'm talking recently. I know in history there has been, but for right now, it's looking like at the end of Trump's second term, the way that the pattern shows, it would be time for a Democrat to go back to the White House. And that is probably when Michelle Obama is going to try. She'll spend 4 years attacking Trump on his whatever, right? That's what happens. That's politics. So she'll spend the next 4 years attacking Trump, building up a little war chest of her own, and really getting her name out there a little bit more, and showing her claws a little bit more. And at the end of that, she'll run for president against whoever the Republicans put up against her. So That's what I think she's going to do. I can't see her wanting to put her name out there, especially with what's going on with Joe right now, with a sexual assault allegation, having a woman step into this role. I'm interested to see which woman is going to want to do that. I'm interested to see what kind of a woman is going to say, yeah, never mind listening to all accusations from women. You don't have to believe them. Um, Joe probably didn't mean it. It's just it's just something they're trying to make up because it's a, campaign year. No, no, this is the sixth time. And there's proof. The woman's mom called in back when it happened and called Larry King, which ironically has been taken off the internet. So I'm going to keep following this. I really want to see where they go with this. I really want to see the character of the Democrats, the Hollywood elite, and the mainstream media. I think it's a pretty cagey group. I think that they're going to try and do everything they can to sweep it under the rug and not address it and not talk about it with the mainstream media. I think that the Hollywood elites are just going to go quiet and not talk about it or address it at all. And I think that it's just they're going to do their best to make sure that nobody even hears about Tara Reade's name. Hopefully, the Fox News and the Republicans are going to keep bringing it to the forefront so that it's there and that this woman actually gets her day to be heard. Because we've seen Kavanaugh's accuser got more than her time to be heard. And when it was proved that there was nothing she had to say that was actually substantial or correct or anything factually correct, nothing, no evidence, no proof, no nothing. She got way more than her day in court to be heard. She had the mainstream media and TV, was all over the TV, the hearing, and it was ridiculous. So why isn't Joe having to have that same battle? I don't know, and it's not fair. But we're going to keep our eye on this. We're going to keep track of it. We're going to see where it goes. We're not going to see any protesters, I can assure you that. You're not going to see any women's group going out. That's the biggest surprise, that there's no women's group, that this is their very battle. This is the very thing that they're supposed to do. This is the very reason that these women's groups are put together, to protect other women and to stand up for other women when they're being treated like this, when they're not being believed, when they're not being given their time, when they're not really being taken seriously at all. These are what these women's groups are there for: support, to build them up, to give them a voice. But we're not seeing these women's groups actually caring. So who's paying for these women's groups? What is the underlying motive of these women's groups if it's not to help the women? If it's to help the Democrat Party, then that woman's group shouldn't have any money funded to it from the government, because it's not there for the women. It's not there for what it's really saying it's supposed to be doing. There's a lot of misguided people in the United States. There's a lot of misguided groups and purposes, and there's a lot of hidden agendas. And we're seeing it right here, front and center, during an election, with Joe Biden getting a pass, getting the silent treatment from the media. Nobody's asking him about it. The Hollywood's not asking him. It's disgusting, and it's sad. And I feel bad for Tara Reade. I feel really bad for everything that she went through and everything that she's going through right now, because it doesn't seem like anybody's believing her. Doesn't sound like anybody's giving her the time of day. And from just recently with the Kavanaugh trial, we see exactly what, if she's accusing someone on the right, what kind of coverage and support and help you can get if it's against a Republican. But we're seeing also what you get for help when you're accusing a Democrat. So stay tuned for more podcasts on the Blue North.